Good day, everyone. Welcome to Basic HTML and CSS Series, Session 2. For today's lesson, we're going to discuss about forms, tables, and embedding. But before we proceed, let us define first and review what HTML and CSS mean. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. These are the elements that we see in a web page like the text, the pictures, the words, and the numbers. And in order for us to put color into that, to put style into those things, we use CSS or cascading style sheets. We're going to use those two to create a simple project for today. Our first step is to open VS Code. Already opened VS Code. And for the sake of those who have trouble seeing, I will be zooming in my screen so that you can see things better. Okay? Now, let us start by making a new folder. And let us name this folder as Session 2. Okay, this is the folder. Let's drag it over here. Okay, now we will create an HTML file by clicking on this button and then type index.html. Enter. Press shift and then the exclamation mark. Press tab. And we have now the basic format for an HTML file. As a review, there are two main parts of the HTML file. There's the head part where we put the title of that document. And this is the part we also put links to link it with a CSS file. And sometimes also use it to link it with a JavaScript file, which we will discuss further in the learning series. But for now, let's review ourselves with HTML. So what does HTML do? Inside the body, let us type a name. For example, my name, Sean Hernandez. Control S to save. Let's open this file by right-clicking on it and open with Google Chrome. So here's the web page. As you can see, it appeared here. I will zoom in for 300% so that you can see better. Please be reminded that this is zoomed in right now, so it might not look the same to your browser. And I will be putting it in a zoomed view so that you can see better what the HTML file looks like when you apply it on the browser. Okay. Now, as a review, I would like to introduce to everyone what we call as an H1 tag. In HTML, there are things called as HTML tags that are within a symbol. I think you're familiar with this symbol. This symbol is a lesser than and greater than symbol. The word H1, the letter H and 1 are within that, and then it's duplicated again on this side, but this time with a slash. This one on the left is called as the opening tag, and this one is called as the closing tag. Let us copy my name, Control V, Control S, and then let us look at what's the difference between typing words outside of the body and then typing the same word inside an HTML tag like an H1. So as you can see, Again, I would like to remind everyone that we are zoomed 300%. They're the same words, same letters, but the one typed inside each one is bigger than the one that's not typed inside an H1. There's also what we call as an H2. So let's duplicate this by doing what? Shift, Alt, press the down button. So there's what we call as an H2. So let's just change the number into 2. There's also what we call as an H3. Let's save it. And now let's look at this. As you can see, H1 is the biggest, followed by H2 and H3, and so on. So that's what H1 tags, H2 tags do. The H stands for heading. It makes it look like a heading. Now I'm going to introduce to you another feature, another tag, element tag called as, so let's delete this. I would like to introduce to you another element tag called as the A tag. Press tab. So what does the A tag do? The A tag does is that it makes a word or number link to a certain source or a website. For example, let us search for Google. Let's copy this, copy Google, and then let's paste it over here. Let us type Google, Control S. Refresh. As you can see, Google is now, it has an underline and it's now colored. So let's click on it, right click, open link in a new tab, and it redirects us into whatever the link is in. So for example, here we place the google.com link, the URL for google.com. So once a user clicks on that word inside the A tag, the user is redirected into that web page. So for example, you want to duplicate this. How do you do that again? You put your cursor over here on this line where the code exists. And then you press Shift and Alt and then page down. Let's remove this, my name. And then let's replicate this one. As you can see, class, let's put some space over here. As you can see, the H1 are on top of one another. The A tags are on top of one another. Control S, but let's refresh. But as you can see, the H1 does not share the same space with the other H1. But the A tag, it shares the same line with other A tags. So why is that? In HTML, there is what we call as display, the display property. And H1 by default is a block style display. It's on a block, meaning it takes up a space on a block, meaning it's in this horizontal position. It takes most of the space over here, while the A tag is what we call as an inline display. So it will share the same line, the same row with other A tags or other HTML elements. And Why am I discussing this? Because displays, it has something to do with what we're going to do right now. Another thing is I'm going to teach you how to put, I'm going to teach you about the box model. Each element in HTML, like an H1, is basically inside a box. So how do you visualize that? So let us press inspect. And then as I will show you, when I put my cursor over here on the H1, you can see that the name, Sean Hernandez, is inside a blue color, while the border, while the space between Sean Hernandez and another item is color orange. Okay, so we're going to go to CSS so that you can visualize this further. So let's create a CSS file by clicking here. Let's type app.css and let us type h1 curly brackets, and then let us put a border, enter. So let's put what we call as 2 pixels solid black, Control S, and let us look at what this did to our web browser, stage 1. Why didn't anything happen? Because we haven't linked our CSS file to the index.html file. How do we do that? We type we go to the header part, the head part. Under the document title, we type link tab. And in the href, similar to the a tag, it has an href. So we type app.css, the name of the CSS file we would like to link. We would like to inherit the CSS properties defined here, declared here. Control S, and let us look. As you can see, there's this black border around all of our H1s. This is called as the box model. Now let us review over here. On the CSS file, I put 2 pixels. What does that stand for? That stands for how thick is the borderline. Solid, that's basically a style. There are different styles, but usually I just use solid. And the last one, as obvious as you can see, it's the color. So it's the color of the border. Now, as you notice, the text, the content of the H1 seems to be on the edge. It's right beside the border, and you would like to put some space between it and the border. So how do you do that? We add a property called as padding. Padding, let's put 5 pixels. Refresh. Okay, as you can see, there was a certain space applied inside the box model. So padding is a space inside the box, inside the border. So it gives like a space between the element and the border. So let's try to put it on the center. X align. Let's just center. And let's look at what it looks like right now. Okay. So this one is now in the center. But as you notice, the border between the top and the bottom is still 5 pixels. Again, I would like to remind everyone that I'm 300%. You might be wondering how come mine's so big. It's in 300%. Next, let us proceed to tables. So let us delete this. Okay, I will not delete this yet pala. I will be copying the same code. Okay. Let's close this one. Okay. I would like to introduce to you the concept of the table tag. Let us type table, press tab. So we're going to create a table inside a web page, meaning it has a rows, it has rows, it has columns. So that's what the table tag does. So what's the first thing that we do after putting table? We type t head, and then the t head represents the heading of the table, and then we type tr. Stands for table row, so it's the row within the heading, and then we type th. So this is what we call as the individual uh, descriptions within. So let's put 5 or 5. So these are individual descriptions within the table, the top of the table. So let's put Monday, Tuesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay. Next, if there's something as called as the T head, there's also what we call as the T body. Basically, this contains the body of the tag of the table. And then we also put what we call as a table row, TR, tab. This time, instead of putting TH, we'll be placing TD or table data. Shift Alt. Let's replicate this into 5. So if you're following, I am making a calendar. Control S. So let's highlight it. Shift Alt, page down. Basically, I'm just making a calendar that shows the weekdays. 9, 10, 11, and 12. So let us view it right now. Refresh. Okay, so we just successfully made a calendar using the table tag. Now, you might be thinking, can we apply the CSS properties of border and padding to this one? Yes, we can. How do we do that? By simply going to the app.css. Let's type table, curly brackets, and let us copy border. We'll just copy it, Control D. And then we also apply some borders into the TH and the TD. Let's type TH, comma, TD. We do this so that we don't need to type a separate bracket again for TD, so that they're already together in the same CSS code. So let us see, Control S. Okay, now we have successfully applied a border, a 2-pixel thick border on our table. But you might have noticed that there's this space between the border of the table itself and the border of each table heading and table data. We would like to collapse them together so it won't look like this. So how do we do that? And the answer is in the word itself. We will be applying what we call as border collapse, and we'll set it to collapse. Control S. Okay, so we now collapse the border. It looks better right now. So what can we do? How about we copy the properties of padding and text alignment into our TH and TD. Okay, we just applied padding in it. So as you can see, the Monday, there's 5 pixel space over here between the content and the border, on top, the side, and the bottom, and the same goes for the other elements of the heading. Meanwhile, the number one, we applied what we call as the text alignment, so it's in the center. Although this part is not 5 pixels, the top and bottom is 5 pixels, and all of it was applied to all of the table datas. Okay. Next, I would like to introduce you guys into the concept of forms. For example, you would like to input data into the web page. So we have that for a thing where we type something. So how do we do that? We type form, tab, space, and then inside form, we type input. Now this creates an input inside the form. So I would like to show you. So it created this. So that's where we type something. As you see, I'm typing something inside. Now as support to the users of our web pages, we would like to put a message over here, or a clue, a hint to the user what is the thing that we are asking and what should they type over here. So for example, okay, how do we do that? So there's a property inside input called as placeholder, and we type inside the quotation marks whatever message you want to send to the user. For example, type your name. Let's go back. As you can see, in a light font color, it tells us to type our name. So it gives the user an idea what he or she needs to do. Now, we need a button. We need a button so that when the user types something into the input, they can submit it. So how do we do that? We do that again by typing input, tab, and then instead of text, type submit, less. So let us see. Okay, so we already placed submit over here. It won't work though because we are using it's just the HTML and CSS file. We haven't really linked it with a um, back end part of the website, but we will go on that further line in our web development series. Anyway, as you notice, the table and the input, they're too close to each other, and we would like to put some space between them. So how do we do that? We do that first by putting each the table and the form into their own separate div. So what's a div? Div stands for division. So let's replicate the div by shift out, page down. Let's copy the table, cut rather. The shortcut for cut is Control X. So it deletes the thing that we're trying to copy from its original place. Control B to paste it back. Control X. Control D. Okay. Control S. So let's go back here. Did something happen? No. We simply placed each of these things into a div, but we haven't really placed a CSS property on it yet. So what we do, we go to CSS and then we type div space curly brackets, and then we put a property called as a margin. A margin is the space that we put outside of the border of an object. So let us type margin, and then let us place over here, let's say 20 pixels. Control S. So let's look. Okay, as you can see before, the table and the input form are smacked on top of another with no space. But once we put margin, is that there's space already. So as you can see, class, margin is the space outside of the border, and padding is the space inside the the border. So please don't get them confused. Okay. For now, that will be it. In our next video, I'm going to teach you how to embed a video, a calendar, and a Google form into your web pages. See you then.